For generations, the worst among us have contrived to tear our social and political fabric apart to the benefit of the few over the many. Their intent and mission have been diabolically simple: divide and conquer. And they have been wildly successful. Hi, I'm Michael James Ott, veteran, retired engineer and businessman, and now ambassador and facilitator for the solution to this madness: Citizen Statesmanship. The vast majority of people from all corners of the globe are just like you and me. Extraordinary, so-called ordinary people. Join us in our quest to recreate the political landscape, eliminating the tribal warfare and hostilities incited for centuries by the label and blame mantra of our traditional leaders. Now is the time to end the atrocities of god-awful leadership, launching a final and lasting divorce from tyranny. All driven by everyday citizens, driven by you and me. Take our hands, walk with us to a far brighter tomorrow, free of hate, fear, and injustice. There's a saying in my country which I am sure is paralleled in many others. You can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make it drink. When it comes to truly fair, effective, efficient governance of, by, and for the people, citizen statesmanship is the water. Cool, pure, refreshing, and thirst-quenching. But when will you drink of it? You and I, we know the answer to this question. Just how thirsty must you be? How much warfare, pestilence, famine, poverty, misuse, and abuse must you suffer before you finally say that you have had enough? That you are parched and ready to walk through fire to get to and drink from the eternal fount of freedom, equality, and fairness that is citizen statesmanship. It's the Pro and Con Show, brought to you today and every day by Citizen Statesmanship, the cure for what ails us. Hi there, welcome to the Pro and Con Show. I'm Michael James Ott.
And I'm David Smith. We are the co-hosts of this show.
We are co-hosts for today's show, but as we were just saying, who we are is much less important than what we're going to talk about today. Because we're talking about things that are important to you and not to, well, it is to us, but it's to all of us. So today's topic is, who are they? Who are they? Well, you know, all the times you yourself or someone near you kept saying things like, they are the worst, or they lie all the time, or they are fascists, or they are commies, or they're going to bankrupt the country, or they are horrible. Or, well, you may be referring to the theys might be the Democrats at the moment, or the Republicans at the moment, or the Jews at the moment, or the Muslims at the moment, or the police, or the lawyers, or. Notice the label and blame
game.
Notice the label and blame. So they are the NARSOLES. We've talked about these guys in other shows. There's another show that's actually called What is a NARSOLE? But we are going to talk about NARSOLES and the label and blame game that they use to manipulate us, the vast majority of us. So there's a tiny percentage of people that are these people. Narcissistic Sociopathic A-Holes. And then the rest of us have been dealing with these people forever. And because of their traits, and David and I are going to talk about their traits here in a few minutes. Because of their traits, they've been very been really good at manipulating us. They've been really good at manipulating us. So, and the main reason is they know that they can distract.
Mm-hmm.
And David, that's the worst thing, I don't know if you've traveled or anything, but you may travel somewhere and they warn you that there's some pickpockets or something. And so pickpockets, they're very adept at watching people and seeing whether they're distracted or not. And for example, if you're ever in a major city or something and you get in some argument with a taxi cab driver or something, and you're standing there and you're arguing with the taxi cab driver or whatever, if there's a pickpocket right there, you probably won't have your wallet in a couple of seconds.
It's all magical
because
illusion.
the focus,
Yeah.
we're humans.
Yep.
And the focus is over here, and
While your money's being taken.
things can happen to you while you don't have the focus. And so, and the NARSOLES, they've been so successful at this because they recognized a long time ago. And in Washington these days, they fire labels and blames out like they're a machine gun.
Mm-hmm.
Like 600 rounds a minute. Label and blame, blue, red.
They point their fingers at everybody except themselves.
Everybody. And they know, and they do this extremely intentionally, because if the rest of us wake up and say, well, wait a second, you're blaming everyone else, but you don't have any blame?
Exactly.
And the second that the fingers start pointing at them, they know they're cooked. They know they're cooked. And it kind of reminds me of a little bit. It's a bad analogy. I'm going to say it anyway. So in The Wizard of Oz, there's a guy behind the curtain.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, don't pay attention to the guy behind the curtain,
Yeah.
Do you remember that scene from that movie? And that's the NARSOLES. They are behind the curtains, giving us the big show, distracting us, and the major ways that they're doing that is with anger and fear and mistrust, and they're pumping that. They're pumping those stories every possible moment that they can, and it's again label and blame.
Yep.
And the amazing thing, do you remember when Donald Trump came on the scene? So back in political scene, 2016, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was a ton of Republicans back then, including South Carolina's Lindsey Graham, who railed against Donald Trump, and they were so-called never Trumpers back in the day. Oh, he's horrible. And by the way, every word that they were saying actually was true back then.
Yeah.
Horrible, worst, terrible, blah, 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 terrible liar, and all this other stuff. But what they didn't realize, they're NARSOLES all. Lindsey Graham is definitely a NARSOLE.
Oh, yeah.
But what they didn't realize is that they're shooting with a machine gun, and Donald Trump fires with a Gatling gun. He's firing 6,000 rounds per minute in his label and blame machine, and it just wiped them out.
Yeah. Oh, it backfired.
It just wiped them out. Remember?
Yeah. I mean, here you got a guy that was railing against John McCain. Are you serious?
Right.
The guy was a hero, not a loser.
Right.
Losers don't lose. Yeah. Sometimes you do lose. Yeah,
that's Donald Trump, and he is if I'm going to say narsolism. Much like you could have autism, there's narsolism.
Narsolism.
So there's narsolism, and there's a spectrum. Just like autism, there's a spectrum of narsolism. And Lindsey Graham and those guys, maybe they're a 6 or 8 or an 8 on the scale of 10. Donald Trump is like 100. He is, and I think, honestly, the reason why they flipped, and now like Lindsey Graham these days says that he's one of Donald Trump's strongest supporters. And the reason why he's flipped is because he recognizes how awesome Donald Trump is at his narsolism.
Yeah. He wants to ride the coattails of the biggest narsole there is.
He's there, and one of the traits we talk about is they want to be around other special people and stuff. So they recognize each other as being the special people, and that's what they do.
Maybe we should remind everybody what the narsole traits are.
Sure, let's go ahead. You want to do the narcissistic one? You want to do
I'll do the narcissistic.
Oh, go ahead.
All right, so we've mentioned on a couple of the podcasts, just so we can keep hammering this away, what narsoles are. No, narsole traits, narcissistic traits, sense of self-importance, preoccupation with power, beauty, or success, entitled, can only be around people who are important or special,
Yeah.
interpersonally exploitive for their own gain,
Yeah.
arrogant,
Yeah.
lack of empathy,
Yeah.
must be admired,
Yeah.
envious of others, or others are envious of them.
Mm-hmm. They did a great job going through those traits. And so now let's think about the people in Washington that we are commonly in the news: Mr. Trump, Lindsey Graham,
Tom Homan.
well, and the Democrats, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, and this is not, folks. This is, our political parties are chock-a-block full. The leaders.
Yeah, I mean, even
The
like
leaders.
here you got. I was listening to Hakeem Jeffries talking about how, okay, we're going to shut the government down. It's all the fault of the Republicans. No.
No.
And you guys are on vacation right now while we're here suffering. The TSA agents are working without pay.
Yeah.
Government shut down. If you're really working for the people, then why don't you get something done?
Exactly. But that's, and we've talked about this in other shows, and we'll keep talking about it because, it's important that you hear it over and over again, because you need to understand these people that we are electing and sending to Washington, D.C., they have zero interest. They are wanting the polar opposite of what we want.
Yeah.
We want resolution and solutions. They want to do nothing but turn up the heat and make, fill our lives full of hate and injustice and fear and mistrust, because then they're in control.
Well, it's the blame game, pointing the finger. And
It's-
that's all it is, constantly over and over and over.
It's the blame game.
These parties like to put their people on a pedestal too, like, the up-and-coming, this guy's the up-and-coming, he could run for president. Well, he's the next future narsole, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, he's already a narsole. It's just whether he'll be elevated.
Will he be elevated to the highest narsole of the land?
Because he's got to duke it out with the other narsoles to get there.
Who's the worst narsole?
Who's the worst one?
Who's got the most?
And it shows you. So again, Trump managed to get elected twice, and it just shows you how powerful he is on the narsolism scale. Because not only did he go through all of the fighting with the other narsoles to get there one time, but he got there a second time.
Yeah, unbelievable, isn't it?
And it's because it literally is, they are duking it out amongst themselves to see who can be the worst among us. They are duking it out amongst themselves. How bad can we be? How much can we deceive people and control them and do our bidding? This is the thing. And they're not only taking, and so and you mentioned the deficit, the budget resolution or whatever. So our national deficit is just going through the roof, and it is absolutely totally irresponsible. It is irresponsible behavior, and yet they aren't doing a thing. You haven't heard a word about trying to pass a balanced budget or resolve and get, not a word.
They're not there to resolve the issues.
Because they are not there to resolve the issues. As you said, Hakeem Jeffries. Oh, it's the Republicans that did this. And of course, Jim Jordan and the Republicans are like, no, it's Hakeem Jeffries. And this is all they do. Just
the last
label and
shutdown.
blame.
It was
They moved
based on, I mean, now that it's the Homeland Security, we don't want to fund this and that, and we're not going to do it because of,
Yeah.
But the last one, it was about healthcare. Nothing got done.
Exactly.
We're not anywhere. We're in the same spot we were 2 months ago, and that's just how it's going to keep going.
Exactly. It's because again they picked this thing, like the healthcare thing the last time. They picked it.
It was something to fight against.
But they didn't. There was no. They didn't care. They didn't care. They just picked that as the cause for today that they could use, and again, they tell us stories. The NARSOLES tell us stories, and they got tons of people, I'm sure, to believe that healthcare was important to the NARSOLES in Washington, D.C. But it is not. They don't give a damn. They don't give a damn about any of us. They don't give a damn about poor David here or me.
I actually was looking for, the job that I've had for the last 6 months. They don't have enough employees, so they don't offer, their own healthcare plan. So I have to go and search, ACA healthcare plan. It was unbelievable hearing some of the responses for people like, well, Trump did a great job. He got rid of Obamacare. Well, no, you're getting rid of the ACA. It's the same damn thing.
Yeah.
So the misinformation that's out there is ridiculous. Yeah. And one side's, spreading one way to tell the story. The other one's spreading the other way to tell the story.
And the intent, the sole intent, is to keep us furious and fearful and full of mistrust.
Yeah.
And these are, by the way, these are all stressful things to have, emotions to have, and it contributes to heart attacks and all kinds of. They're not just taking the money; they're taking our lives.
Yep. They
literally are taking our lives. They are putting us through so much stress for their benefit. They are destroying us. It's causing suicides and depression and heart ailments and
they're even saying cancer's caused by a lot of this.
And cancer can be caused by all this stress, and they do nothing but inject this stress into the public and social networks and fabric of our country solely for their own benefit. Mm-hmm. So in the end, whether you realized it or not, and you may have been thinking they was the Muslims, or they was the Jews, or they were the lawyers, or they were the police, or they were just the Democrats, or just the Republicans. No, it's all of the political parties, all of it. And in Washington's farewell address, in case you don't believe us, he had incredible foresight. And back when he was leaving office, you remember George Washington. If you don't remember, look him up. He's on the internet. And George Washington, there's a few pages in here where he rails against political parties, and he recognizes the sort of stuff that and this is what they're doing to us, he talks about. Mm-hmm.
He might talk about it in a different language and a different context.
Well, no, it's pretty close.
Is it?
His language is a little bit old-time English kind of thing. It's a little bit hard to read compared to, modern English. But still, you read it and it's like, okay, yes, he's exactly talking about what's going on today.
That's why he enabled the Constitution and everything.
A couple of the people that we talk all the time about, the founders of our country. They took huge risks, and they did phenomenally great things, and it was all to give the rest of us for decades and centuries beyond the opportunity to have freedom, equality, and fairness in tandem and in concert. That's what they did. And they, once they had done it, Washington, with all the battles that he fought and all the soldiers that were killed right in his presence. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like a modern day general where he sits in the command center somewhere.
He was out on the battlefield.
He was on the battlefield with these people, just yards, 50, 100 yards away from the fighting, and all the stuff with trying to get his troops to survive the winter and all that kind of stuff. All the hardships that he went through, and they did all this. And by the way, I'm going to take just a brief aside now that I think about this. So back in the day when we decided that we are going to try to break away from Great Britain and start what we call the Revolutionary War, there were people like us, and those people at the time were called Madison and Hamilton and Washington and Franklin and these people said, look, it's never going to get better. It's just going to keep getting worse. So we the people need to do something different. And I'm not going to, I've got a copy of the Declaration of Independence, but there's a listing of, here are the atrocities that these people, meaning King George and his court at the time, but now it's King Trump and his court, and not just King Obama, King whatever. It's these people have been doing this stuff to us for a long time. And now, just like during the Revolutionary War, we are proposing a solution. We hope. We offer that it does not need to be warfare, just needs to be us. Because fortunately, we have the Constitution. We have the basis from which, these guys had already done this work. But now we have to leverage it. Mm-hmm. And we have to do what's right, and we need to replace these people with citizen statesmen. And the last point about this before we come back to where we were, and I apologize for the tangent, but back when Hamilton and Madison and Franklin and Washington and Jefferson and all those guys were saying what they were saying, don't be stupid about, there was plenty of people that said, what are you talking about? What? You're proposing that we go up against the British Empire, the strongest navy and army and military, the strongest force in the world up to that point. They were a juggernaut of power back in the day. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. And so there was many people outside of this beginning group who said, oh, it can't work. Can't possibly do that. You guys are crazy. No. They see that this is the path forward and they start working toward it. And then just like we're doing, as more and more people start thinking about this, they come to the conclusion that these first group of people came to.
And just think of all the risks they took.
And all the risks and everything that they took. But this is the thing. If you want to have freedom, equality, and fairness, if you really want that in your life, if you want to lead a life free of hate, fear, and injustice, then you have to. Democracy demands some responsibility. It demands some action.
Yes, it does.
So that was a long tangent, but I thought it was important to say. So I hope you found that interesting and motivating, I hope.
So we went over the narcissistic traits. You can just go over the sociopathic traits. And I think once you hear some of these, you'll understand exactly what we're talking about as far as the traits and where you can relate them to politics of today.
All the people, the worst people, and it's in politics, but it's also in corporate America too, and stuff like that. These people are scattered around, but where you find them is if you're looking at positions of power or extreme wealth or whatever,
they control.
That stench that you smell is narsolism. That's the stench. So sociopathic traits, because narsoles are both narcissistic and sociopathic, they have the double whammy on this. So they lack empathy and remorse. And they are manipulating and deceitful. What have we just been talking about? What do we talk about over and over again in these podcasts? They are impulsive and irresponsible. Yeah, They have no interest in balancing the budget.
Just blabber, blabber, blabber.
This is just an opportunity, again, to put people on the side and so that they can continue to torment us. They are aggressive and violent. They often disregard rules and laws. They have a superficial charm. Superficial is the key word there. They have a superficial charm. They feel superior and they are self-consumed, and they are pathological liars. And so even when I was 10 years old, I remember my family members, my parents and their friends, whatever, talking about politicians. They always lie. That's still
the term today, though.
I know, and they even make fun of it in movies. Yeah. One of my favorite movies, Hunt for the Red October. There's a scene in there where...
Is that Sean Connery?
Yeah, Sean Connery plays the captain. Right. But there's a scene in there where a politician is talking to this guy from the CIA. This analyst is the hero of the movie. And he goes, I'm a politician, and so I'll steal your baby sucker while I'm giving him a peck on the cheek. But, I know, and he goes into this, I know that this has to happen, and I'm going to look good if you make me look good, basically. Yep. So I know I can sacrifice you, and you can make me look good. And that's the whole little nugget of that. And you see that in many movies. And we talk about movies from time to time because, okay, they're not real, but they relate to everybody can relate to. Yes, they help you see it and imagine what we're talking about. So those are the traits. And they, again, it's just, they have all of these traits. So the other thing is we want to make clear that you understand that people need to have the full battery of these traits. And so if somebody, is charming, but otherwise, is empathetic and,
It's not like I'm gonna give away $1,000 to this cause, and then what was the cause? You don't even know what the cause was.
So but the NARSOLES have all of these traits, and so a guy that blares their horn because you're at a stoplight and the light turns green and you don't go fast enough for whatever reason. So he's not necessarily a NARSOLE. They're not a NARSOLE. Someone that flips you off after maybe you're walking down the street in New York and you accidentally bump into somebody and they flip you off. Maybe, I'm walking here. Yeah. Well, they are not a NARSOLE, right?
They're just having a bad day.
They're in a rush. They're in a bad day or whatever. And even, and again, this is a thing, they get influenced. Even some of their normal activities, their normal way that they interact with the rest of us, us good people, it gets warped by the fact that the NARSOLES are running around and causing all the hate, right? And discontent and fear and mistrust. So you get these people, they're all agitated already. Mm-hmm. And then you bump into them. Yeah, because they're humans. They're not NARSOLES. They've just been extraordinary, ordinary people that have gotten, wound up. Yeah. And they're ready to spring.
Human nature.
Human nature. And so NARSOLES, let's talk about, just name some famous NARSOLES. Okay. So Trump, Putin,
Kim Jong-un.
You've got from history, guys like Napoleon, the pharaohs in Egypt, various emperors through time. Ben was talking about, because how bad things have gotten. He said, at the end of the Roman Empire, they were so hell-bent on distracting people that's the games, the so-called games in the Colosseum were at their height of horrific, performance. So they were butchering people and, feeding them to lions and all this other stuff.
You got Genghis Khan.
Yeah, you got Genghis Khan. That's another one. There's
so many.
There's so many.
In different realms of everything too.
And it's not even the people that, because again, these people have been around forever, and some of them have been more horrific than others. Hitler certainly was more horrific than Chamberlain, for example, or Churchill, or these guys. But they still, all those people were narsoles. They just
different levels.
Were different levels,
yeah.
and more.
Some were more successful because of a lot of these superficial charm.
Right.
I mean, look at Hitler. Do you think he was charming?
Because of their circumstances and because of their intent, they had different outcomes. But the thing is true is, and especially the gauntlet to get into office. I can't speak to all the other nations, but the gauntlet here in the United States of America to get into a major office on the national level, it has gotten far worse during my lifetime. Far worse.
Mm-hmm.
And so who ends up getting through the gauntlet then? It's the worst of the worst of the worst. So 50 years ago, there were still narsoles, but they weren't as bad because the gauntlet wasn't as bad. But these days, and I apologize for saying this again, but I'm going to say it. So back in 2016, I was absolutely apathetic. And then 2016 rolls around, and it's Hillary Clinton against Donald Trump. And it was at that moment when I looked at those two narsoles. We hadn't coined the term narsole yet, but they were narcissistic sociopathic A-Holes. Mm. And I looked at those two people and I said, whoa.
You got to, which narsole is going to win
this is, how did we get here?
And the media kind of destroyed Hillary Clinton at the end, the Benghazi.
Well, yes and no. It's all, the media, again, they're just narsoles themselves, the leaders. The media's, owned by billionaires. Mm-hmm. They have their agendas.
Let's see what we can find on the other one.
And the amazing, just to your point about that though, Donald Trump was way more media, centric, if you will. He was entertaining. People wanted to watch him.
Entertainment.
People wanted to watch him. They didn't want to watch Hillary Clinton. And that, to your point, that may well have been why the media decided to torpedo her at the end, because they thought that Donald Trump would be.
The ratings were going to be better.
And they did all this stuff, and but they were absolutely sure that Trump wouldn't win. And even Trump was totally sure he wouldn't win.
Nope.
Totally sure that he wouldn't win. They were amazed when they woke up the next morning back in 2016 and he had won.
That's because he had the most of all these traits.
But the thing is, the media, you're right, actually, the media was focused on him because he was this entertainment thing, and people were drawn, whether they hated him or liked him, they were drawn to it.
They wanted to see what the next chapter was going to be. What's the next episode?
And billionaires want your attention because they get advertising dollars.
Yep.
So they were like, "Hey, this guy provides the attention." And now that you mention it, yes. And then there were many shows on so-called left-leaning programs, but they put Donald Trump on there all the time because he drew ratings.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, when he actually won,
they were dumbfounded.
They're like, "Oh my God!"
The Democrats were dumbfounded.
And oh my God, we helped him get elected. And there's tons of people on the left media that haven't, they don't
jump on board, and they were like,
they don't fess up to this anymore. But back in the day, they were like, "Oh my God, we helped Donald Trump get elected." They helped Donald Trump, and they did. Yeah. They did because they were focused on making money, and he was pointing them to higher ratings.
He was an entertainer.
And so let me just take a brief aside on that. Ladies and gentlemen, whether you're watching or listening, good government is not entertaining. Good government is not entertaining. It is as dull as milk toast. Because good government is reasoned and reasonable and fair and appropriate. These are things that are dull as milk toast. But the opposite is narsolism and authoritarianism, and people start getting tossed out the windows and poisoned and killed and all this other stuff. And, well, that may be fine for you until it's you, or your wife, or your child, or your friend down the street. You know, when it comes and hits you, then you know it's you.
Home.
Then it hits home.
Yep.
So, as we wind up the show, we just want to say that, again, we're just normal people. And we don't edit these, you know, if you listen or watch our podcast, these are not professionally produced things.
I'm not a professional. I don't get paid.
We're volunteers. We're not doing any of that professional stuff. And it's intentional because we're genuinely just people like you. And we see that there is a vision for getting things better as opposed to worse. And we know if we don't do something, things are going to get worse. So we're encouraging you by doing these programs to get with us and do something to make our futures better.
At least listen to the very end. I mean, sometimes we ramble, sometimes we get off track, but it doesn't matter. The point is, we care about what the future brings.
We care.
Yeah.
And then we guarantee you the NARSOLES don't care.
They don't care.
They don't care. They don't give a damn about you. I can guarantee that.
Yep.
They don't give a damn about you. So we also want to, along those lines, we attest to the fact that you'll never see or hear about sponsors or advertising here on our programs. Now, of course, we can't prevent these things from being inserted into the programming on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or YouTube or whatever. But you'll never hear us selling things, you know, asking for donations.
The only thing we're trying to sell is Citizen Statesmanship.
Exactly. And so we won't take money from anybody. We won't be influenced by corporations or individuals. We don't want your money. We don't want your time. We don't want your adoration. We talked about earlier, we don't care whether anyone ever remembers our names. Be delighted if they didn't. If someday, hopefully soon, if citizen statesmanship is the law of the land and no one knows my name, I will be the happiest person on the planet. I will be the happiest person on the planet. We want you completely focused on what is best for you and your closest friends and family. We want you to be wildly self-absorbed in this way, because by doing so, we know that you'll embrace a far better future when we, people like you and us, actually lead us by, for, then and only then for the people. And the point, we keep talking about the NARSOLES all the time because they're a tiny percentage of the population. They aren't the rest of us. They aren't like the rest of us. They are not. But we've been, because of their traits, because of our traits, because of the way that we can be manipulated by them, their charm, their lying, we get manipulated by them. And because of that, we have let them control, run, lead us. And of course, it's had all kinds of bad outcomes, from war and pestilence and famine and poverty and misuse and abuse.
I think what they sell is just false hope.
They sell false hope. And, and again, if you've ever talked to a politician and then then monitored what they did after they got elected, you know it's true that they made all kinds of promises and they didn't keep them. And oh, by the way, just because they said they kept them, if they get up there on the stage, a year after they're in office and they say, I kept all these promises, here's all. Well, did they or didn't they? Because it's easy to say, and honestly, they lie. They constantly lie about that. They did not keep their promises. It was a bunch of crap.
I mean, I heard yesterday the man in charge said, I ended 8 wars already. We've been in 8 wars?
No, well, in fairness, he's talking about just globally there's 8 wars or whatever, but
Yeah,
no.
he ended them all.
No. and he says, and by the way you know that he's always lying is because the numbers always grow.
Yeah.
So he's...
That's a narsole.
That's a narsole. For example, he was talking about, well, I'm going to, I promised that we would lower the cost of pharmaceutical drugs. So he's giving these conferences, and on the first day after he's elected, well, we're going to lower the drug prices by 100%, which is basically you're going to lower them.
If it
completely.
sounds too good to be true, it's usually.
But then, like 5 days later, it's like we're going to lower the prices 500%, 1,000, and then later 1,000%, 1,500%, 2,000%. You can't.
You can't even.
The math isn't there.
It's 100.
It's 100%.
It's not 1,500.
If they lower the prices 100%, they're giving them away for free.
They'd be paying you to take the drugs.
And if they tell you it's 1,500%, they're going to pay you $15 for every dollar you'd normally spend on that drug. They're going to pay you.
That sounds like a great deal.
That sounds like a great deal if it were real,
Yeah.
but it's a bunch of baloney because that is, and they do it all the time. They do it all the time. So write into the show at freeequalfair@gmail.com and tell us your stories or make your comments or whatever. Our next show is also going to be another great one. It's called Internet Pros and Cons.
Come join us, won't you?
Yeah, please come join us.
Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for joining us today.
Michael.
Thank you, David, for joining us.
Thank you. No problem.